To order, welcome guests. And the first topic on the agenda is to approve it. And we did have a request to start with the member addressing the board first. And so I just wanted to share that with the board. I need for somebody to go ahead and
Make a motion for the agenda with the members being second.
I'll second. We have a first and a second. I do want to include before we that you'll notice there is an executive session after the regular board meeting, but Brett has something to go over with us before we talk. So I'm just going to make sure. Very good with that.
That'll be during executive session.
That will be a during executive session. So we had a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same. Okay, so approval of the agenda passes. Mr.
What spot?
What spot? You're up.
Stand up
You
here.
can stand.
Okay. I'm not only a member, I'm a member of the nominating committee also. And last week we had a meeting. Howard is the chairman. He'd asked, he didn't know if he was gonna make it tonight, so he had asked me to speak. It was basically over the election. We, as a group, feel that we're not following the bylaws. Don't understand, especially me, I'm new, so I know it could be repetition. But I've not got all this information from you guys since I'm new. I don't understand when I was asked to get on the board. I first wanted to see the bylaws, what my responsibilities were. I saw who was amongst them. It was a great group of people, still is a great group of people. And so, and I saw what my responsibilities were, and I agreed to get on the board. And it seems to me that I'm just nothing but a seat on, or the whole group is. Because I don't feel as if you're following the bylaws. It simply states, nominating committee, section 3-06, D. The nominating committee counts all ballots of any election and voting matters with the assistance, and I underline assistance, with REMC employees and other agents of the cooperative. We discussed this, Brett, and he said that could be interpreted several different ways. But I'm pretty excuse my language, I'm pretty darn sure if that question was out to the members, they would simply say that the nominating committee are the ones who are supposed to count the ballots. And I believe that would be almost 100% what the members would say. And it's just simply not being done. And I understand about the voting, or time-wise takes us longer, is what I've heard. I don't think time should be any factor in any election, especially now that we don't have it at the auditorium, where there's a lot of people waiting for the results, that we kind of do things a little differently now. So I don't see where that is involved, or time should be. And I also understand the legalities of getting sued and stuff if we don't count them right. I know these people here that's on the nominating committee. I know just about almost every one for 30 years or more. And believe me, they're going to count that ballot as perfect as they can. Because even SBS say when they spit one out where there's a question, it's been graded, it's graded by a human, you know, if there's any questions. So So what's the difference? It seems to me that the nominating committee is not trusted at all to do their job. And I won't speak for myself, but my friends who I've known for 30 years, I take that as a slap in the face to them. And if you guys don't think that they can do their job. So that's really what, I'm willing to compromise or try to compromise. Maybe SBS could count the electronic vote, because I understand that, Brett explained that very well. But I just don't see why the mail-in ballots should not be sent to Wickens and counted that day. So we can do, so we can do our job, you might say. And this is the way I interpret the structure. You have the president, then you have the Congress, and we feel like we might be like the House of Representatives. When this bylaw was wrote originally, I think they did not want the directors or any REMC employees attached to the voting. And I think that's been broken. And I just don't understand why it would have to be done that way. So it's kind of in a nutshell.
I do have a question. Are you here on behalf of the nominating committee?
Yes.
So you voted on this to present to the board tonight?
Yeah, we was all in agreement. I don't know if we voted to bring it up, but we was definitely up there.
Keep minutes of your meeting?
Yeah.
So you have that in the minutes where the nominating committee wanted to come and present to the board tonight? Because I've spoken to members of the nominating committee and they're not in agreement with this. So I'm just asking.
I'd like to know which ones it was. I mean, there was two people that didn't say much of anything.
But it's my understanding that formal action was not taken to come before the board, and that's fine. You're welcome to come as a member. But someone came to see me today to make sure that I knew that this was not a unanimous action by the nominating.
I would say nothing that we voted on that night was unanimous.
But you did vote to come here tonight.
I don't know exactly.
But she's.
I don't
no.
think there was a motion to come and vote as a board.
We've been over this numerous times.
I understand.
I would argue that the nominating committee's job is not to count. You have the most important job of anyone in this room in finding people who are qualified and are willing to serve on this board. It's called a nominating committee, not a counting committee.
Bylaw says it right there.
With the assistance of any agent of the REMC. This board unanimously approved the voting procedure in October. And we enlisted the use of SBS. Last year, when we were in this room, and Sandy, I think you were here, we agreed that the CEC and the nominating committee were going to meet to get this worked out. When did you guys meet?
We just met last week.
The CEC and the nominating committee, when did you all meet to get this worked out? You didn't. I can answer it. You guys did not.
That's correct.
So here we are again.
So it sounds to me like it's more little fine little tiny points, but still the matter's still there.
Would one bridge or opportunity for all of this be the SBS be more involved with the nominating committee? That the SBS be communicating? Because Sandy, you said in the presentation that they give, and I understand what you're saying, and my mind goes to how much it costs, and I understand, but when they give their presentation, and a lot of it's technology, the online voting, the ballots, the confidentiality, would part of the bridge to all this, and not so sure even needs a vote, but just communication with SBS and the nominating committee be helpful?
They have presented to that.
They did.
No, I know the presentation, but the election process and the election
Weren't they at your last meeting?
They were.
But to send you the election updates that they used to share with us, they share that with the nominating committee?
As of last year, yes.
Okay, so you got emails of who voted, what percentage of the area voted?
We did not get emails from SBS.
Okay,
Yeah, there were downloads from our portal. They won't, I don't think, I
you
don't.
can add them to an email. I'm just saying communication with SBS and you might be a bridge, opportunity to bridge that.
That would help.
Yeah.
I mean, just,
No,
Rachel, they come from our portal.
I'm sorry.
You guys.
I was mixed those two up.
So would the next step be for the nominating committee and the CEC committee?
For 2024,
Yeah, because we've already,
we've already signed the contract with SBS. It was a unanimous vote by this board to enlist their services. We did it in the October meeting.
But there wouldn't be have to contract or policy if the SBS could just communicate more with the nominating committee directly. And since the
But that's
SBS is
what they
working with
want.
us, we can ask them nicely, or even if it's just the president nominating committee, communicate with them. The same communications that any staff members get.
But I don't think they're asking for communication. I think they're asking to count. Is that correct?
count, be part of the process. I mean, that's what the bylaws say.
I think those bylaws were actually visited by a couple different attorneys and,
Very-
you know.
They were
We haven't-
actually modified to support this process with SBS.
The attorneys agree to how that's wrote. But they ain't saying anything. How's attorneys interpret that as saying who's basically in charge, ain't the right words. But according to the bylaws, to me, reads that nominating committee should be somewhat involved in counting ballots.
I think at the very least, the way the bylaws are written or that were read this evening, that it suggests that the nominating committee should have a say in how the tabulation is done.
Hence the meeting between the CEC and the nominating committee, which never happened.
Okay, so, I was not president of the group last year. I've already reached out to the CEC about a meeting. So, who dropped the ball last year? Who
I
was?
don't know, because I'm not on the CEC and I'm not on the committee.
Who was the president of the CEC last year? That's not something that the board in general is aware of.
The last sitting president we had of the CEC was Jeff.
Correct, 2 years ago.
The CEC is a committee or a group that never assembled until we had a contested election. Just to be honest.
Actually, it was assembled before the contested election.
But that year,
Yes, but there were issues with.
I've been on this board for
Since
6
then.
years, and that's the only time that was ever assembled.
But again,
I would ask then, why? Why was that the only time it was ever assembled? If this is
Wasn't
a
necessary.
sitting committee, they should at least acknowledge their place and members.
And if you want to get technical about it, whoever's up for election this year shouldn't have been voting on the procedure. Because it says the board directors who are not standing for the election at an annual meeting shall serve as the credential election committee. So, so whoever is up for election, I believe Jeff, Steve and Jason, they shouldn't even be allowed to vote on that, which was unanimous, so it wouldn't make any difference anyway.
Correct.
But you probably put input in.
It's a budgetary item though too, so we would vote on that.
I just,
So if you look at the way, this is just a question, if you look at the way the bylaws are written, who should have the nominating committee called the CEC or vice
I
versa?
have no idea, but we all sat in this room.
I know
We have
did.
been over.
actually sat in this room and the chairman of the board committed to get the nominating committee involved to resolve this. It never happened.
We've been over this
But-
so many times.
But we also, yeah, never mind.
But you were in the room, we were all in the room.
Yes,
To answer Albert's question, it
And-
didn't happen,
okay,
obviously.
no, it didn't.
Right.
So we still don't know why. We also sat in this room multiple times and were told that these meetings are expensive. We're having too many meetings. We've already paid you guys too much money. We all sat here and heard that,
Communicated from who?
a board member.
But we paid you too much money.
Yes, you guys sat in, that might not have been the exact words, but we were told that it's getting out of hand, these meetings are too expensive. So it's like, I don't know, I was like, okay, I'm just kind of done with all this. I don't
So
know,
you-
ready to go.
You thought that you guys shouldn't meet anymore because of that conversation?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's, we were upset, you guys were upset. It just wasn't, I felt like you told us that that's enough meetings.
So do you think going forward, the SBS involvement with the nominating committee would help bridge some of the, SBS could directly email the nominating committee president to let them know the information that we're getting? Because that was part of the questions before we saw the
Yeah.
presentation.
Albert, how do you're the president.
I'm willing to accept emails and disseminate them to the other members of the nominating committee. That's not a problem. I'm not always sure that, that extra information will not hurt. I'm not sure how much it helps. As far as the voting percentages, I was led to believe at the meeting we had last week with SBS or whatever it is, that the information of voting percentages and who did what really wasn't disseminated until among the members or to the board.
From what I understand, there's a progression of what areas and districts have voted, what percentages, no details of it, but just along the way.
Yeah, I was under the
You know-
impression from the meeting we had the other day that that information was not exchanged from them to REMC in Decatur County.
Rachel received information, the ballots are going out in the mail today. We have X percentage from this district, X percentage from this district.
See, I believe those.
Not by district.
Asked.
Okay, it's not by district, but, well, they do have territories. She said it was by territory.
We did not pay for that the last 2 years.
Okay. But any communication along the way would give you some assistance with the voting and let you know what's going on. And I'm not arguing you counting the vote, but now with online and technology and the amount of people since COVID do the online, since the meetings were taken away, I just didn't know if that would be a bridge for 2023 to help.
It certainly won't hurt for this year. I think there's, I believe among the nominating committee, there is a desire to see change in how we handle this as far as, from top to bottom. Who chooses how the elections are conducted, who does the counting. I think there's a desire among the nominating committee to have more input on that and possibly see those things change. When in fact, we brought some of that stuff up at the nominating committee meeting the other night. And, we were told that this is by far the cheapest way to go. But we've never seen anything to substantiate that. We're told that. And we're told that 76% of the membership thinks that this is a great way to do it. But by the same token, only 20% of the people that surveyed responded. So, I get the feeling sometimes that 10 or 15% of the members are controlling what the rest of the members have to deal with. Now, are we wrong, or is the procedure wrong as far as what's good for the membership? I can't say that. I don't have that information.
So I did on that survey because that survey that we do on the annual meeting is why we're doing what we're doing. That is essentially why. So I went back and looked at the statistics behind that survey. So at a 95% confidence interval, the margin of error on our entire population. So there was enough response to that survey that the margin of error statistically for the entire membership is plus or minus 2.9%. So that's the say 3%. So 78% of the membership wants online voting, it's plus or minus 3%. So what I've gotten from that is that survey is statistically reliable to predict our entire population with the amount of response that we got. And that's at a 95% confidence interval. So statistically, the majority of our members want an online, secure, confidential platform, which the only way you're going to get is to go to a third party.
So Jason, if you'll remember, I came to the July meeting and presented a couple just hiccups in the voting process. And my first statement in that paragraph was that I was comfortable with SBS. But there are other things, way we did a few things didn't work out well.
I agree.
So that's I want a better experience for our members. And I stated that that's why.
That is a discussion between the CEC and the nominee. I'm not pointing fingers of who didn't call who or email who, but I'm up for election. I have no say in it whatsoever. I don't want to have a say.
And we all,
Getting together,
Pardon?
who's responsible to put the meeting
I don't
together?
know, Clay.
Because of now
I know it's not this guy, or this guy, because we're not on it.
Well, I can't take the chairman out of the picture. I believe he had a responsibility because he made a commitment.
But you were also the last sitting
I was.
president of the CEC.
Which,
I mean, but I'm not here to point
we're not
fingers.
gonna get this argument out.
is, when does the CEC committee change on the calendar? Did it change in June after that election?
Right after the election.
I would say that's.
Okay, okay.
With that being said, why wasn't there any information for the ones that are on the CC now saying we need to get a hold of who dropped the ball on that?
I don't know.
And that being.
You're part of the CSC.
I get that.
I'm saying who,
Who's-
so
Signs. So.
now what this.
I'm just saying,
Just-
we have been.
It's something that it just needs to be delineated somewhere. And so from now on, this doesn't happen.
And Sandy, your comments on that paper were actually really, and I told you this in the nominating committee, were really, really useful. And actually,
Appreciate that.
we inputted those things into this year's, paper ballots are gone. There's nothing to count. So I think we took care of those issues through this new process. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you here.
There's not gonna be any paper ballots that you can vote in on at the meeting that day?
Nope, it's all gonna be done electronically.
That is not what I voted on when we voted this. I thought there was still gonna be paper ballots that you could bring in and vote that day, just like you did last week, always. Because there are people that wanna do that.
There was the
And they
discussion.
will have the outcome in each of them.
Electronically.
They'll still be able to vote on site.
Right.
You'll be able to vote on site, just not on paper, Carl.
Electronic.
It's just
They
not.
can still vote at the meeting, just not with paper.
Oh. They can vote
But they
at
can
the
still
meeting.
vote the day, yes,
Oh,
Yes.
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 I get that.
Yes.
Yeah, they can still vote at the annual meeting, which we all unanimously approve the annual meeting details, which include us.
Exactly.
Yes.
But they can vote on the
Yes.
day of the annual meeting.
But there will be no paper.
And Jason, I understand you guys went through this many, many times. I understand that.
We did.
Yeah, I know you from what I've heard, but and I'm just using you for an example. If you have a problem on the farm you can't figure out, you just don't say, I've spent enough time on it. If it's not resolved, you still have to get it resolved.
But in my mind, and I'm not being disrespectful,
No,
please don't take it that way.
I won't.
But in my mind, this is resolved because the membership said they want a secure, nonpartisan, implementation of this election. They don't want anybody here. We had a contested election. Okay, if we had counted all those, and I'm not saying that everybody can count, okay? We're not worried about anybody's ability to count. We had a contested election, so we brought SBS in. We had this whole room full of people. We went through the whole SBS presentation. At the end of the day, Their accuracy rate, I mean, this is a reputable national firm. They do this all across they don't care if Bozo the Clown wins the election. They could care less. 99.999 whatever percent accuracy. So when we do have a problem that comes up and somebody wants to contest it, it's out of our hands. Nobody in this room had anything to do with it. Take it up with them, go through their process, go through their results. The membership they want that. They want to be able to vote ahead. They want to be able to mail them in. They want to be able to vote online. So in my mind, the issue is resolved. The resolution to the issue is to take the counting the ballots out of the bylaws. We don't need you guys to count. We need you to find qualified and willing people to run to sit on this board. It's a nominating committee, not a counting committee. In my opinion, that whole thing should be struck out of the bylaws and this is over. But in order to do that, we have to have a 2/3 vote of this board.
And it
We
came
did
up,
a straw poll.
it came up with an option right before we were supposed to get our nominating committee, and we felt that was an inappropriate time.
That's right.
As they wanted to do it the month that we were voting on the nominating committee, and we just felt that was an inopportune time. It wasn't fair to make a difference the month that we're asking people to be on the nominating committee. It did not look like a,
And probably some of that's on us. Maybe we should have brought this up again and modified the bylaws right in July. But that's honestly, in my opinion, that's the solution. And I'm only one. But then we don't have to worry about this anymore. Because if you're counting all ballots, then every time we vote for chairman or the secretary or who's going to the IEC, you guys should be in here counting. When does that ever happen? I can tell you, 0. It's not just the election.
That's not how it's stated.
It says all ballots, all voting, they should count.
That bylaw was changed in 2018 because, and it was because of the election process. The election process that we do today. That's why that whole bylaw that's why that, with an assistant, that was the entire reason that whole thing was changed.
Well, then if you had the power to do that then, why didn't you guys make that change, get that counting the ballots off of that so that?
Because we had no idea at that point in time if that online platform was going to work. We didn't know that the membership would want that. We had no idea.
or the annual meeting was going to be virtual,
That
like
too.
2020, 2021.
Actually, at that time, the nominating committee counted the ballots at the fairgrounds. The day of the election.
Agreed.
But we changed it to.
No, that was
Yeah.
after that change, because that election, nominating committee counted the ballots the day of the election.
The few ballots that we had yes, that is correct.
So
That doesn't change the fact that
to your point, if you really want to see change and make a difference and we're not spinning our wheels and going through all this again, then you ask your directors to change the bylaw to follow what you think it should be.
That's not what I want.
So I should ask you guys to vote to allow the members to vote on changes to the bylaws.
No, you should
No,
persuade.
I'm telling you that I think that was the key. That, at least from my standpoint, that you folks have too much power to change the rules as we go. Not that haven't changed the rules justly. I just feel that this board has too much power to change the rules that we operate in.
It takes a supermajority to change a bylaw.
I understand that. But I think it should have a super majority to make the ballot to let the members decide if that ballot.
And I would piggyback on that and say, you needed a majority to come in here and discuss this as a nominating committee. And I don't know that we've seen that. Correct?
I mean, tonight,
Yeah.
But you're here.
But you're here, and that's, we've heard you, and I think we've spent a lot of time, so we need to get through it.
I could have wrote more people down. There's only 4 lines.
Anyway,
I'm just saying, you're saying we should have had the majority.
Well, we've asked you if you voted on it, if everybody was wanting it, and, we've heard from you.
Well, shut up.
Okay.
Shut up. And I mean that jokingly.
Okay, so I would say, well, I'm not sure that we voted on much, but I felt we had a headshake, a nod to do this. So if that's not good enough, I apologize to you for letting Bill come up here and talk. But I really want to just say thank the board for taking time to listen to us and consider our position. And I've got a meeting to go to, and I know you've got a lot of other things to do.
Yeah, we would.
tonight, so I'm going
You
to,
understand where we're at though now. I mean, going forward, our vendor's going to be taking care of this.
Steve, can I make a comment for Mr. Arnold, please? Mr. Weiss, we never met Mr. Weisbach. I appreciate your time and your attention to this. I'm sitting here in a unique position because the contested election was me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 21. And part of the fact, I appreciate your long-term relationship with people that are on the committee now. I appreciate the trust and the loyalty that they've earned and you've earned through those long-term relationships. I don't share those same, because I don't know those people like you do. That being said, when I was in the contested election 2 years ago, there is evidence that a former member, I'm exempting the current members of the nominating committee, a former member of the nominating committee was very, very active in trying to get me, my opponent, elected over me, which I see as a tremendous conflict of interest.
I agree.
So therein, from my perspective, SBS brings the independence that as a director trying to run for a position, I want. I don't have the loyalty that you've earned and over the, whatever the case is. And I don't mean to insult anyone's integrity but I haven't earned that. They haven't earned that with me and I haven't earned that with them. Hence the independence. So, again, in that thing, from my perspective, the election was not even contested by my opponent. It was contested by people on his behalf, which within the bylaws is okay to do. But one of the strong supporters of that contestant was a person who was on the nominating committee, which I see as a huge, huge conflict of interest. So to say, and I understand the way it's written, but to say, here, nominating committee, you count all the ballots. I'm sorry, that's not a comfort level I can get to very quickly based on that experience.
Just curious, because like I said, I'm new. Is there several people around counting each ballot? Or is it one person counting ballot, nobody watching it?
They use the scanning it's not completely scanned.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I'm just curious. This is
I can't answer that.
back when they used to.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea.
How'd you do it? You used to do it.
I was.
They have entertainment. Don Wickens and the nominating committee would go and we'd count all the ballots. And if there was a tie, so you had another vote there that you could, and I never witnessed a tie, but you had another ballot you would use. So we just counted them on site in those days. And that was,
And the employees help.
Count and then
the
record.
employees were there to help. But and Don Wickens was there. And so we just count them, divide them, and then it was, so.
Yeah, was there somebody, sitting next to you watching each one? You know what I'm
Don
saying?
Wickens, the attorney, just oversaw the thing. So no, there was nobody double checking each person. We
I think that's
all
how they do that at the farm.
Well,
Do that at the farm credit.
It's,
Down Brookville. Farm service.
well, I don't feel bad about SBS. If you guys said, we want you guys to count the votes, I'd count the votes. It doesn't matter to me. I think it needs to be a fair election. That's our main thing here.
All right, well, we thank you for your time.
I'm out of here, fellas.
All right.
Have fun.
Have fun. Go to the next.
All right, our next item is cost of service study with John. I know we have some things to talk about. We're gonna keep this open, just be cognizant of the discussion. If members You don't want their names to be mentioned. So the point where we need to go into executive session. There were also a couple, there was a recent email today, and there was an email dated 11/19. And if there's questions that come out of that, we'll try to get some of those.
Actually, I generated both of those emails and I would like the responses in writing. I think I'm pretty specific on the questions I asked and the information that I requested.
Well, I think we need to talk a little bit about it during this session. And
I'm sorry, I'm not used to writing stuff down. Say that again.
he wants,
I want the responses to my questions in writing. It's pretty specific on my questions and I want it in my emails.
But we can go over them as a group, right? And then you still get them in writing?
That's fine.
all right, John, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't have slides for tonight that are new. I'm just going to talk rather from two of the memos that were provided from the management to the board. First one is about the industrial interruptible rate impacts. And this goes back, I think, 2 meetings ago because I couldn't attend the last one due to a conflict. We talked about, I had agreed to calculate or estimate the billing impacts for the members who were on 2 different rate schedules that are going to change with the Hoosier rate change come April of next year. The first of those was an industrial interruptible customer. And that rate calculation was relatively straightforward because what's happening is that Hoosier is eliminating the industrial interruptible rate. So that particular member will move from the interruptible industrial rate to the standard industrial rate. To calculate that billing impact, it's not really a projection of what the bill is going to be. It's just an estimate of comparing our test year, which is last year, 2021's annual billings, recalculated at the rate that will be in place next year. So it assumes there's no changes in their consumption, which of course is not true. Their consumption would potentially change. But there's really not another way to do it that doesn't delve into, guessing and estimating. So we took the billings and the old interruptible rate on industrial had 2 components, a base demand and an interruptible demand. The interruptible demand charge is a little bit lower and the amounts were known. And so all we did to calculate the billing impact was to replace that interruptible demand charge with what will be the base demand charge under the standard industrial rate. And that annualized revenue impact ended up being approximately $30,000. So it's a straightforward calculation. Now, what the staff here was able to estimate is that if the interruptible customer were able to participate in the load modifying resources program at MISO, and that could potentially provide savings in the range of $30,000 to $60,000 in the form of a rebate check. I did not perform that calculation, staff did, but I'm aware of MISO's LMR program, and that is the kind of member, the kind of consumption, the kind of premise for which those programs are designed. But that was a relatively straightforward calculation, and I think that for that particular member, it's easy math. As a percentage, that's a number less than 3%, about 2.5% annualized. And that was really all I had to say on the industrial interruptible customer. It's 1 member. For the other set of members who's potentially be changing, this is the LCP class, the large coincident peak rate class on the retail side. The reason it's changing is because right now the rate has a component that is associated with the retail member getting a signal or basically it's a price signal. Notice from MISO that from Hoosier rather, that they want the customer to reduce its demand. So it's kind of a demand response program, like an interruptible rate. They put the call out for you to come off the peak, get off the coincident peak so that they won't be able to avoid a system emergency type condition. And then the customer gets a lower rate for that. So The issue is that that program is going to change with the Hoosier rate change. So as the wholesale program changes, the retail tariff also can change. And so the idea is that when this LCP tariff basically changes, customers, the members would be eligible for the large commercial tariff, meaning they would move from LCP to LC. And again, a billing calculation, to do that, we would take the test year usage and the test year rates, and we would then replicate those test year rates, but instead of using LCP charges, we would use the LC charges from the retail rate schedule. Now, the difference here between this one and the industrial is that in the test year, the members got notice that they should interrupt, and so they adjusted their demands, right? They altered their operations on site, and the demands, or coincident demands, came down. So we can't just change the rates and have the numbers fall out in this billing estimate, because the usage would also change, because we're not going to give them that signal anymore. So we had to go into their billing data and determine what a proxy for their actual demand would be, absent that notification. So we did that from the billing data, and we came up with estimates that basically are in the range of just between 40 and 45% increases on an annualized basis for these members. And the total amount would be $79,500 for a year if the consumption in future years matches the consumption in 2021. And the individual members would all experience an increase in a range of 42.8 to 49.7% a year. If we were to make this change from the LCP rate schedule, which is basically should be going away, to the LC schedule. So as the CEO pointed out in the memo, you do have two options. One, you can just make this move, right? Move those members over, and there are 4 of them, over to the LC rate and experience that increase at one time. The other option would be to not eliminate that LCP rate schedule that they're currently on right away, and instead revise it such that it would kind of transition them over at a more gradual pace. So you're not going to get that signal anymore, that load reduction notice from Hoosier the way you used to, but it's possible that you could create a new rate if you wanted to mitigate the immediacy and take a more gradual approach. You could maintain the LCP tariff and revise it such that their bills change, but not as dramatically as they would if they moved all the way to the LC. I haven't done that exercise. This is more of a philosophical question for the board and the management team to consider. If you want to do that, we can develop a schedule that would move them in that direction. But I think those are, and you have to determine things like, how much do you want to move? How much time do you want to take to transition them over to the standard LC schedule? I could make recommendations on those points, but basically that's the idea. Do you want to move them immediately, or do you want to design a path that's more transitional over a period of time? And if you do want to pursue that second option, then we would have to talk about, I mean, I could design a couple different options, but you'd have to decide how long do you want to take and what kind of percentages do you feel are palatable? Assuming their consumption doesn't change, which I don't know anything about that. The individual members could assess that. But I think those are the options. You do know if you moved it right away, it's going to be a pretty significant increase for these 4 members. You know, somewhere 40, 45%, that's a pretty sizable increase for any member to incur at one time.
John, if someone registers in LMR, this is the first time I've seen anything about a rebate. So they're actually going to pay the full, and where's the rebate coming from? And is it seasonally to match the MISO seasonal construct? How does that work?
That comes from Hoosier, so John's
Yeah.
not gonna know. It is an LMR that gets paid quarterly as a rebate
From,
from Hoosier. It's
they're
another,
going to flow through our books? Are we
Yes.
actually going to write the check?
that's a good question. I don't know.
Is it going to be seasonal? That's going to happen once? Okay.
It is definitely.
I would assume that we would get money dispersed, but that's, I guess, I hadn't considered the Hoosier.
I'm almost positive it
So
comes.
we're gonna bill them, they're gonna pay that, and then at the end of that quarter, sometime in that seasonal construct, then they'll get that, or once that's over, they'll
Even qualifies for it.
Have they been notified of this possible change?
Yes.
They have.
Yeah, sometime last year. Yeah, they're well aware of it. Well, oh, let me back up. LCP, no. Interruptible, yes.
The first one we talked about, yes, and
This one, the one we're looking at right now, the LCP, no, not at all, because we had no idea where we're gonna go with this.
It's a substantial increase that wouldn't want to get blindsided with it,
I agree.
with me, so.
For what it's worth, I agree with that. I think, increase, once you start talking about a double-digit increase on an annualized basis, that's a significant increase for, now, you can't just look at percentages, right? There's also that small dollar figure. So if I ask you to give me 3 cents today, I ask you to give me 6 cents tomorrow, you're not gonna cut my right arm off because it's a 100% increase. It's still just, right? But here, we do know the dollar amounts and they are significant. And so for at least 3 out of these 4 members, it's very sizable. You're talking 5 figures.
Well, John, I would even argue on the fourth one, that is the highest percentage, but it is the lowest dollars. That relative to that increase, it's,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
don't spend percentages, you spend dollars.
That's
But you
right.
gotta write a check, you don't say 49.7% or 42%. Right,
So
so that
increase-
additional money.
It was going up, the percentage and the dollars together tell me that these are large. And for that reason, I would support the idea if the board and management team's pleasure to pursue a transitional approach in the interest of what we call a rate-making principle of gradualism, so that they can avoid rate shock. There's not a dramatic change at one time. They should understand that the ultimate goal is, putting LMR aside for a moment, the actual rate structure they're on now is not sustainable because that interruption signal, that conservation signals, it's not coming anymore. In its current form, that's going to stop. And so the rate structure should also reflect that. But at the same time, there are options for us to maintain the rate schedule, maybe altering the components so they don't work the way they do now, but they'll pay more, but not as much as they would if they switched all the way over. And even that could transition over. If you wanted to make it 2-3 years, you could set that up in there too, so that it increases X percent roughly over those periods of time. And at the end of that transition period, we call it, they'd be at the same rate as the LC and could move over to it.
But, so the ultimate goal then is the LCP rate is going away from Hoosier. And the ultimate goal then is to have them move to the LC rate, which is effectively the only rate they would have available based off.
So just language.
Setting aside LMR, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the LCP is not a wholesale rate.
Right.
So.
Right. The wholesale basis for the LCP
Correct. The pricing.
retail
Yeah.
schedule is going away.
But there is a third option, I believe. That would be a new rate structure. And that would focus on large power service with a low load factor and a large power service with a high load factor. And this would be similar to what Southeastern is currently doing. And I believe that's an option. As a director, I would like to at least see what that brings to the table. Southeastern, I sent everybody in here the email. They have 5 3-phase service rates. And I think it's much more fair than what we're currently doing. And I, as a director, I would like to at least see that as an option. Large power service, low load factor, large power service, high load factor.
And these were what we looked at on the website, correct?
You showed me the other 2 meetings ago on the website. That's also, I went onto their website, I copied those 5 rates. I forwarded that to everyone on the board. John, I believe you were on copy of those.
Yes, I have.
Again, I'm not saying make that decision tonight, but I would at least like to look at that third option.
So my first comment is that the idea of creating those rates is not coupled to the LCP question that you have here in front of us for these 4 members.
I believe it is. I believe they would fall into one of those. I believe they would fall into the high load factor.
That may be, but other members may also.
Correct. Well, there definitely would be. Everybody would have to go into one of those 5 groups. But it's a lot more consistent, and I think you'll see a lot less variation from bill to bill.
And what do you mean when you say it would be a lot more consistent?
That is just my thoughts on my investigation that I've done. And I really don't want to go into those numbers because it's stamped confidential.
Well, I'm talking about numbers. I mean, consistent with what? In other words, the rate designs in these other cost tariffs.
I have studied our commercial rates quite a while, and I see a large disparity in what our members are paying. And
I'm sorry, disparity.
in the cost per kWh. I look at demand is a part of your bill structure. So is your energy, so are your other variables. But it all ends up coming down to how are you measuring cost per kWh? It's the same on the Hoosier bill. Every right-hand corner, it shows what we're paying per substation, cost per kWh. I'm not saying you set your rate strictly on cost per kWh, but it's all a calculation to come back to a measurement.
When you say there's a disparity, are you saying that does that mean month to month their amounts vary? Does that mean one member to another? Do you mean run one rate schedule to another? What is?
3 of the above is what I believe.
Well, so I guess I'll go back to my original comment. The question of whether you want to have rate structures based on load factor is a fair question. It's a good question. It, in my view, does not relate to the 4 members' ability now to respond to a price signal for managing their load, for operating for the RTO and or TNT to operate on its emergency.
I do believe, though, if you go with this different type of rate structure, you won't be adding a 44% increase to their bills.
So that is a different question also, because what that basically says is that the LC tariff that they'd be moving to
Could possibly be more fair.
could be, well, it could be lower. I mean, whether it's more fair or not.
No, and if it's truly higher, then that will be presented to the board. That is the kind of information that I'd like to see.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that I think what you're suggesting is a larger initiative and not just a solution to the current question of these 4 LCP customers.
I think it would be a solution to these 4, but I think it would also be a solution to all of our commercial members.
So I agree with you that it would be open. It would be what makes it a larger question, right? The fact that you're really looking at all the commercial customers.
Correct. And that's what, again, that's what I've been trying to do for 6 years.
So my only other comment on that is that, so I looked at the rate structures from southeastern Indiana, is that what it is? Yeah, SEI. And it looks to me like of the 5, so you've got the CPS 1 generally aligns with the Hoosier rate structure, which is good. B5 is a block rate with no demand. The BD5 is a seasonal rate with a single kilowatt hour charge. I mean, the rates are very different. You do have 2 others, the C5 low load factor and the C5 high load factor, which are seasonal demand and a block on the energy, where all that means is when I say block on the energy, it means you pay different amounts for your energy based on how much you use. So there's thresholds where your energy charge jumps from one amount to another based on how much you use. So you're baking in an incentive to either use less or use more, depending which way the rate goes. So those 5 rates are all different from one another to begin with. I mean, the 2 load factor ones are similar, but of the 5, they're not all the same kind of structure. They're fine examples to look at for the structure of a rate. The actual numbers are meaningless.
Oh, totally agree. I don't agree with their numbers at all, but I believe at least if you could present another option for new rates for all commercial members, I'd love to hear it.
But the other point I wanted to make on that is that with respect to the other commercial customers, the findings in the cost study show that all 3 commercial rate classes, the small commercial, the medium commercial, and the large commercial, have double-digit positive rates of return. So you're making money on them as a class. Those rates of return are higher than the overall system rate of return, which means they're carrying more than their fair share of the cooperative's margins as is, as a class?
I don't think they're higher than single phase.
They're higher than everyone but industrial. According to-
Okay, that's a whole nother discussion.
But it's,
There were multiple
FAB.
mistakes in the rate base calculations, and I believe we need to, at some point in time, that's one of my first questions, is how do we resolve not having these mistakes come up every cost of service study?
so I'm going to comment on that right away because there's really no way to do this but directly, and so that's what I'm going to do. That is not correct. There has been one error identified in the cost of service study, and it had to do with the input of plant data that I identified after historical information from another study was provided to me to drive me to try to find that. There were not many mistakes provided in the study. There was one. And when it was corrected, it had virtually no impact, no measurable impact on the results of the study with respect to the rates of return for the classes and the recommended actions with respect to rate changes. I can't speak to previous cost of service studies because I did not perform them. But I can say that every cost of service study is a snapshot in time. Doesn't tie necessarily to previous cost of service studies. And any cost of service study that's a snapshot in time is going to be what you could think of as a zero-sum game. So I have to take all of the costs, all the plant-related costs, all the O&M costs, depreciation, all of it, and allocate all of those costs out to all of the rate classes. There's no rate class that gets skipped, and there's no dollars that don't get allocated. So it's a zero-sum game. And that allocation of expense is based on the usage in the test period by all of the classes. So that, let's say in 2020, we do a cost study and it shakes out the way it shakes out. And then a year later, the residential class uses twice as much as it did the year before. That's going to drive a change in the results of the allocation of all the costs and all the plant and all the substations and all the transformers and all the depreciation, all of it, because the consumption in those time periods is different. It's a zero-sum game within relative one class to the other. All the classes have to pick up the costs. There can be none left over and there's no other classes. It's just like it's Matthew's birthday today. So let's have a cake. We'll all get a cake and we'll cut the cake and we'll eat it. But then if these fine folks over here are going to join in, I didn't know they were coming tonight. So now we're going to have to change the way we cut the cake. I still only have one cake. And everyone's going to get a different amount of cake now that we're having these folks join in. That's the same way a cost study is. His birthday last year, I got more cake. Not this year because I have these 6 fine people joining in. That's how it works. And so that's the way the cost studies work. I'm not making this stuff up. And the same is true for the plant. When we talk about the plant and how much we're going to assign of our facilities to the various rate classes, I can't assign them to individual members unless there happens to be only a single member in a rate class, which you don't have. I think you can assign, you don't have to assign revenues because we know where the revenue comes from, down from the billing data to the individual member. I know how much revenue for demand and customer and energy and tracker and everything else that we put on the individual customer's bill we have. But on the expense side, I don't have any of that. I have total expenses on the company's books. That's why we have cost studies. That's why the NARUC, the Utility Commissioners Group, put this book together decades ago that we still follow. That's why NRECA puts out these retailer rate guides, because everyone across the country does it the same way. There's a problem. You can't assign individual costs to individual members. We have rate classes. So the rate classes for large commercial, small commercial, and medium commercial, which I understand used to all be one. And then I don't know how many years ago, I'm told that at some point we carved it up into these 3 different sizes. The only way we can assign costs to these classes is by taking the total cost and allocating it down to the classes based on their share of demand, their share of energy, and their share of customer-related costs. That's how we do it. So it's not wrong. There's not an error in the rate base. There's not an error in the cost. I'm not going to say it's a perfect analysis because it is possible. Maybe there are other small errors, but this process I'm not making it up. It's a standard industry accepted process. That's the way you do it. That's the way I've done this for 12 years in, I don't know, 30 different cost of service studies for distribution co-ops. It's not wrong. The process is not wrong. And I want to point that out because when you say there were many mistakes made, what can we do to stop it? That is not correct.
Well, when you compare it to past cost of service studies, which you were not a part of, and I give you that. And what I wanted to create is consistency going forward. So I truly thank you for your time and your commitment and your passion.
I appreciate that.
I don't think our previous consultant would agree with mistakes have been made either. And can we touch upon because this is a theory that we've been talking about for 5 years around. And I mean, the question I would ask on looking at new rate structures, the problem with that is you're going to put members, changing the entire rate structure, you're going to put members in a position where you're going to be increasing some people's bills and you're going to be decreasing.
And you can justify it. That's what doing a
But what's
cost of
the-
service study is for. So again,
Well, maybe you can. I mean, you may be able to justify it or you may not. So the trick is we have rate classes, right? So we group the similarly situated customers together in a rate class. Now, there is occasionally a class that only has one person or one member in it if they're a unique large customer, a special contract, something like that. You rarely have those, right? So, I mean, you have the 4 or 5, however many it was, industrials. I think I treated them separately here, but in reality, they're on the same tariff. So you don't have that. So you have rate classes to assign the cost. And what we do in the rate class is we take the class-related demands, the class-related energy, the class-related customer count. And we use those numbers to split these costs from the top down to the classes. In any one class, the members aren't the same. So in the residential class, 3 houses on the same block, Brett's in mine and Matthew's. I'm not paying the same thing he's paying, and he's not paying the same thing I'm paying. We all pay a little bit different. The rate's the same, the per unit charge. But my kids leave the lights on in every room in the stupid house and run around all the time, turning them off again. His don't do that. His aren't even at home. So it's all different. And the same is true for your farm versus the farm next door versus the other farm. And the same is true if I go out on the road, driving down the road, I see these industrial facilities, these factories, if they're factories. They all have different usage patterns. Some have spiky usage where they use a lot of energy at one time over a short interval. Others have consistent energy across. They shouldn't necessarily pay the same thing, but we group them in rate schedules, in rate classes, because you can't have a separate rate schedule for every single member. We group them together because their usage is similar, and then we make them pay the same thing. In reality, they're not all going to be paying an equitable amount. Some will pay more than others, some will pay less than others, but we still have to treat them as a rate class. Hit them with the average cost per unit for the rate class is what they pay. If they don't really belong in a rate class, that's a different analysis, which I think we talked about. But if they do, then they're all going to pay that. And in reality, some are going to compensate others and be subsidized, and some are going to subsidize them.
Has the
That's how it works.
been to create another class then to catch those that are not
You can
fitting?
create other classes when the member usage characteristics justify that. And so if you analyze the data for their demands and their energy usage or their load factor is kind of a way of treating both of those at one time. And if you can analyze that to see if customers are in fact similarly situated. And if you think of it as a scatter plot, if they're all grouped down at the bottom on this chart where it's demand versus load factor, then they're similar. And if they're all down there and one guy's up here, then that guy's separate and should be in the same class.
And I think that would jump out if you look at the low load factor and the high load factor.
So if you got a consistent load, why would they be grouped into something that spikes? If you know you got somebody with, if you got a group of customers who got a consistent load, why would they not be in their class? You know, a residential that you just create a different class. Is that even, I'm curious why you'd have a consistent load in a class with somebody that spikes.
So you would, I guess a couple things here. First, if a customer is always spiky, if that's a word, yeah, you probably wouldn't want them in the same group as the other customers, even if their maximum usage is the same. you might not want them in the same class as everyone else because they're gonna end up pulling the average and adjusting, making the rates so that they're not really fair to everybody in that class. The issue is how spiky is spiky, right? How often do you look at it? How many classes do you want? Are they the same way every year? You know, if it's the state fair versus a data center, right? If you had a data center, they would use the same amount all the time, right? And then the state fair, which I've just picked that out because everyone knows it's only a week or two a year and that's it. You know, you could say the same thing about, I don't know, football stadiums, college football stadiums, or things of that nature that are not consistently used. A lot of the time you want to put them on a separate rate. Would pull them out of those classes. But again, it's a judgment call. You know, you don't want to have 42 rates. So how big
I get that.
is
They're just-
the issue?
Yeah, but we have now 8, 10. So we have a plethora of rates. It's just 4 or 5 of them aren't even used at all.
Yeah, we built those flat rates.
That's what I'm saying. We have rates if we need, again, I just think there are opportunities. And that's what I'd like you to at least give us options on. If you would, please.
John, I understand what you're asking.
Could you speak to, okay, if we smooth this out, I'm back on LCP, going to LC.
Okay.
So it's about $80,000. That 80,000, just because we do something to smooth that rate out, that 80,000 we're getting billed is not going anywhere. Who's going to pick that up?
Let me be perfectly clear on this point. That $80,000, if you embrace a gradual approach, you're asking all of the other members to bear that difference. Now, I don't mean to say you're going to go out and increase their rates. I'm saying, let's say you wanted to move 25% of the way towards the LC rate. So that $80,000, you're going to give up, you're going to leave $60,000 on the table and not collect it. So the co-op will just be shorted on its annual margins by that amount.
Yeah, that's cake.
Less cake.
That's what I thought.
The next year it might go to 40 and the next year it might go to 20 and the next year it'll be made.
But somebody's going to pay that. That doesn't go away just because.
Not necessarily.
Smooth the rate out.
If it's never been used or consumed.
So it assumes that if you take as a given that their consumption doesn't change,
Right.
then the wholesale bill is going to go up. You're going to be short of a wholesale bill by that $80,000. Yes, that's true. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to hurt the co-op. Maybe the co-op has excess margins that year. Maybe it's a hot summer or a cold winter or whatnot.
But the whole idea of cost causation
Not
is
being equal. You're
Somebody
making
else
that
is
money.
paying.
somebody else is paying it.
The main thing,
Also, that happens today.
Yeah,
Now,
I get it.
these classes in here were not at the overall system rate of return. That's happening.
But this is pretty straightforward.
This is the very straight.
the main thing on these LCPs is right now, how we bill, I cannot do anything.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. What you would be doing if you did adopt a transitional approach, it's not really the LCP rate schedule anymore. We could leave that name, or you could change the name, or you could leave those slots in the billing program or whatever. But really, you're saying, I'm going to make up a rate that kind of gets, if this was the old one and this is the new one, and I'm going to kind of create a new rate that's in here somewhere. Or in steps.
These rates would all fall into the high load factor, correct? That's how I read it.
Oh, I have no idea. I have to look at it.
Okay.
Brett, you said there's been no conversations with them regarding.
These are all low load factors.
Okay.
Very low. Absolutely low.
So,
They don't even run during.
yeah, but they shut down because of the rates. So if we had a more structured rate, they might not shut down in the winter.
Yeah, no. That's where we gotta get rid of this too.
There's no question that the signal for them to get off the peak, lower their frequency peak demand, that's going to stop. So
They're gonna have
purpose-
no incentive.
the driver of the rate schedule is changing, and yeah, that's right.
We're
So
gonna have no incentive to stop now. It's gonna be just run.
It actually,
that's
Right.
correct. Yeah. the
It
interruption
actually
is
could-
gonna go.
be worse, right? Because now they could hit our.
Say it again, Matt.
Sorry. Once
That's better. That's true.
there's no incentive to stop if you don't have the price signal, shut it down. But if we don't pick up the phone and say, hey, it's a load control, and they shut down, Now there's not gonna be us picking up the phone and saying there's a load control. There's no reason to shut down for that. So if they're running it all, they might as well run full blast all the time. Which they either need to run zero or they need to run full blast. Right.
But if they ran a consistent, wouldn't that be easier? If you could get them to, instead of having highs, lows, if you kept it where they were a consistent load.
They're not a consistent,
But they're
they
not.
only run from 7 to 3:30 in the
Okay,
afternoon.
all
A
right.
consistent load runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Correct.
Gotcha.
They're always gonna be a low load factor because they ain't running all night. I mean, half the time they ain't running. In the winter time, it's even less because you ain't got no daylight.
Brett, you said the conversations with V4 there's not been an initial conversation, correct?
No, because we did not know what the.
I have no knowledge of these. And then secondly, this is tied to the Hoosier situation, so this becomes effective April 1st.
Right, yes.
So we're looking at 4 months, 3 months, a little over 3 months.
I mean, the main thing is gonna be is I don't know how to bill because I'm not gonna get a signal, which tells me when I need to bill.
Something has to change. It's just a matter of how it has changed.
I'm just trying to work through the.
By April.
By April.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we're not gonna get a phone call anymore. It says, hey,
But you gotta do it before April because our bylaw.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there's a lead time that.
Yeah.
You gotta back it up, so it's not April, it's sooner than April.
I think it's 60 days.
what is the,
To January.
what do people normally do? Do they take 2 years to transition people, a year, 6 months? What have you seen historically? What have people?
Yeah, I mean, it's always less than 3. The number depends on the magnitude of the increase. So if it's a 25% increase, you might do it over 2 years. If it's 12 is sort of at the edge of palatable, right? When you get to 40, then that's, I would say 3 would be my recommendation, so that by the 4th year, they're back.
At least 3 years on that order, you might push it to a 4th.
You could. That's about the longest.
But every year we do that, somebody else is paying that bill. I mean,
I'm trying to,
that's my heartburn over it.
For those individual members, all else being equal, and set aside a larger rate design consideration at this point. Yeah, 40%, these numbers, it's a big increase. So how you want to spread it is really just a question of what you think is tolerable, palatable.
What's their threshold for pain?
Or you could look at it, they've had a pretty good deal for many years and that pretty good deal disappeared because Meissen and Hoosier took it
Well,
away.
and to that point, part of it is incorporated in that conversation with them on the presentation of the data.
That's true. And the other piece I have to say I left out that I think Brett alluded to is on the LMR piece. So I don't factor that in to the Hoosier rate bill, the retail rate calculation. If they can get some kind of a rebate through the LMR, then of course that would offset.
Yeah, mitigates it, sure.
Mitigate the issue for them. So maybe that would, if they qualify, which is a different question.
They don't. We
Only 2 seasons they qualify.
2 seasons they qualify.
one of them qualifies, which amounts.
So if there was more qualification under LMR, you might say do a shorter period or maybe don't do it at all. But yeah, the less LMR rebate you have, the more sensitivity you have to their taking a big hit once. But I'm glad you raised that point, Jason, because it is true. You want to do these things with eyes wide open, right? You don't want any, everything you choose to do should be deliberate. So you have to know all of the factors, which is, yes, all else being equal, if you don't do a larger rate change and you just move them to the LC, it's going to be 80 grand. If you transition them, then you're leaving money on the table. By that, I mean, you're hoping that the cooperative margins can take the hit or whatever amounts are the transitional amounts for any given year.
Well, effectively, everything else pays.
Well, you could say everyone else pays for it. I mean, you're not actually going out and charging them nor on their bills, but ultimately.
It's reducing our mark,
The margin
reducing our
affects the overall financial financial wherewithal, the capital credits, the whole bit.
Yeah, do you want to kill them, or do you, not them, but you want to kill the margin 1 year, or do you want to just wound it for 3 or 4 years?
And that all assumes no change in behavior either. So if this signal changes, will they be, I mean, the rates technically all still send a pricing. You know what your charge is going to be, and it's going against your peak demand. So what other steps can you take to reduce your peak demand? That's why I'm running around in my house, turning off lights. That's why, so I can lower my bill. They should be kind of doing the same thing. And they can, now that you've taken away this, when you do take away this extra piece on that phone call, that's gone. They should, as sophisticated financial entities,
Self-imposed.
try to respond. Now, some operations, that's just not conducive to that. They can't do it. I've seen that before where, it's a glass manufacturer and we make glass and it's got to stay hot. I don't care what the price signal is. It's got to stay hot. I can't make the glass. That happens. But I don't know about these particular places, how much they can actually respond. But
So we would have to go forward with something by January meeting.
If we want him to build something, yeah. Build something different than just the regular LP rate, essentially.
LC rate, you mean? Large commercial?
Yeah.
If you're gonna redo all the commercial class, that's gonna take it. From rate structure.
so those are two different things, right? It would not be difficult to come up with a kind of replacement or an interim LCP, a rate structure that would be a transitional one to keep the LCP rate structure alive for a period of time where they could be moved over. For these four, that's one easy thing, not time consuming. I could probably turn around a couple different options on that relatively quickly, bill impacts, et cetera. But the larger question that Jeff raised is a much more significant initiative, as I think you understand. Right?
No, I definitely do. But if we do create this fourth rate, then I believe other members should be allowed to be on it.
I think it needs to be board decision.
Correct.
Go forward.
I agree.
Yeah, I would recommend against that particular option because the whole point of, if you go this sort of, call it the smaller step, right? If you go this interim step of transitioning these four.
No, and I misunderstood you because I didn't think that we were doing the interim steps. I thought you were creating a different rate that would work for these four, but that should be available to anyone who had that same parameter that didn't know of this opportunity.
Thanks for clarifying. So I guess I'll say it two ways. So if we have the quick and dirty approach and the larger approach, right? So the quick and dirty is, I got four members that I don't want to drop onto the LC really fast. So I'm going to take the LCP and tweak it around for a year or two so that they can transition over to a rate that's about the same. And that's easy. And that would only be allowed for the people already on LCP. On the larger initiative, if you're going to really look at your large commercial rates and your load factors and all of that, then that is a system-wide review.
Correct. Could you do something
And it would.
for those four
Right.
that would hit that overall system review?
Yeah, I would put it the other way. I would say my overall system review is also gonna.
Yeah, again, but
Because that's the bigger part. You got 67 other customers on the large commercial rate.
actually you got 180 commercial members. And
Well,
again,
if you throw the medium and small in.
yeah,
that's
and to do it all, but if what, you could start by doing this chunk that would feed into creating the new rate structure.
I should also point out that when I looked at those other tariffs that you provided, my way of assessing if they're, I don't want to say good, because all rates have some good and bad parts, right?
And I want to clarify this. Jason and I talked briefly about these being an example of a change. So, I mean, this is an opportunity. Someone else is doing something different. The numbers that they have plugged in, I don't agree with at all. To fit our audience.
I appreciate that. So I guess where I was going with it is, Hoosier charges you for power supply. And they do that two ways. There's the industrial rate schedule over here that your bigs get. And there's the standard wholesale rate schedule that
Everyone else.
Everyone else gets. And they charge that to you by substation. And then this is an issue with the G&T, the co-op model. You have to translate twice. You translate from, so Hoosier has all these rates that they offer all the different members by either industrial or standard by substation. And that's the first translation. And then you, as Decatur County RMC, have to take your rate classes and map them to the various substations so that it's two transformations of wholesale power supply costs that you have to get. And something gets lost in the translation each of those times. So where I'm going with this is a near ideal way of designing a retail rate, what you charge your members, is to match what Hoosier charges you for them, and then layer on the distribution related charges. And that's the ideal way. But of course, there's a lot of challenges with that because could you do that for lighting? You don't even meter lighting. Can you do that for residential? That's a two-part rate. You don't have a demand charge, but the Hoosier has demand charge and it seasonally varies. So it's hard to take the Hoosier, the wholesale rate structure and just map it one-to-one to every one of your retail classes. It's easier to do for your large power classes because you have that data, you have demand, and they're used to using it. Demand that varies by month, energy that may or may not be on or off peak. They're more sophisticated. The metering's all there. The history is there. It can work better. So in a perfect world, that's the way you would design those large power rates to mimic as closely, mirror as closely as possible the Hoosier rate structure. So if Hoosier breaks it out into a production demand and a transmission demand and a radial demand, I would too. And if they split it up by summer and winter and shoulder, I would too. If they layer in some new stuff, this new demand charge for the member services, I would too. Then the co-op as a financial entity isn't hung out when there are differences between what your members pay you and what you have to pay Hoosier. They're lined right up in terms of structure. When I looked at these 5 tariffs, that's what I looked for. I said, how closely does the structure, not the numbers, 10 cents, 4 cents, who cares? The way they set up the structure, does it match up with what Hoosier is charging them? That's the key to a good rate design in terms of minimizing the distribution co-op's risk. Keep wholesale, what you have to pay, lined up in structure with what you collect from your members. To the extent you can. You won't be able to do it everywhere, like I said, because of lighting or two-part rates or whatever else. Time of use. But anything else, you're just taking on risk to the distribution cooperative. So the better you can, the more closely you can align with the Hoosier, the better. That's just a big picture comment about what makes a rate design more sound or less sound than a different rate design. The more differences you have in the way Hoosier bills you and the way you bill your customers, your members, the greater risk you have that they're going to diverge.
So would you say the commercial rates that we have today mirror that closely, more close than blocks, low factor, high factor, all these other ones?
So I would say that the way your commercial rates are right now, okay, so small commercial, your demand and your energy are both split by summer, winter, and off-peak. And then the energy is the same way. That's what Hoosier does. Medium commercial, demand on peak, winter on peak, summer, off-peak, energy on peaks, winter on peak, summer. That's what Hoosier does. Large commercial, same thing, except there's, same thing. So structurally, other than this new charge that Hoosier's dropping in April, that's 62, that demand charge for the member, whatever they call it. Other than building that into it, so they're not misaligned.
That's the only thing I was going to bring up with looking at, I mean, we can always look at new rate structures, but I'm not real sure. If you look at how our rates have performed compared to, especially going through COVID, it showed us a bunch that our rates actually perform really, really well. According to the ups and downs in ours, which is good for the end of line member. And second, I'm not sure by changing the rate structures, what we're improving or what we're solving there, other than spending quite a bit of money to create a different look of rates. And I think our rates actually mirror Hoosiers really, really well compared to Block. I mean, Block, there's risk in, right?
Block is risk and block is not what Hoosier's doing.
Correct.
That's true.
Our rates actually mirror our wholesale bill very, very closely, which means it takes risk off us, it takes risk off the members, and it's probably fair. What is fair? And I don't know what we solve by looking at low factor, high factor. I don't know what you get other than spending a bunch of money, and then you're going to actually force people into rate increases and decreases. We did that when we went to this whole medium commercial, right? So we had, this was prior to you, John, but we had small commercial, large commercial. We did the whole look at that in 2017, 17 and 18. We created a medium class, which stunk to go through, but it was justifiable, right? Because you had some members that had to move those rate classes. So you had some members getting a pretty big increase, some members getting a decrease. It's the right thing to do. But what we got out of that was separation because we created 3 classes, so it was more fair. I don't know by going to those rate classes that you guys were talking about does any of that.
So the tricky part is that all of these members, the way you get billed by Hoosier, they're all on a standard wholesale rate.
Correct.
Because the industrial rates go to all the industrials, that's just the 5 or 6 bigs. So everyone else is on the same Hoosier rate. So the distinctions you're making in your retail differences, if you were to make some new rate structure differences, really are all going to stem by how different these commercial customers use energy. So I think if it were me, before I were to design any new rate classes, I would analyze the membership in the current classes to see how diverse they really are, back to what you were talking about earlier with are they different? Are they not? Do they look like they should be charged the same rate? Do they not? If there are standouts, who are they? How much do they stand out? What should we do about it? If there are standouts, they should arguably not pay the same rates as everyone else in that current class. But without knowing that, it's hard to say what the new rate buckets should be. I mean, bucketing customers into a rate class by their usage patterns being similarly situated. And until I know that, I don't know how to bucket as a verb, which I guess it is because I just use it like everybody.
We did the full-fledged.
Categorize, go with that.
We did the full-fledged class segmentation study for our commercial classes. We did not include, which we kind of talked about doing, but we did it for commercial in 2018. And then obviously we just had you look at kind of a high level of that exact same thing. And I mean, I think what it told us was that's why we created the medium. We did not do that for single phase, which we've kind of talked about in the past.
So that was only commercial.
Yeah. We did the full-fledged, where we looked at peak demands and diversity factor, load factor, coincidental, all of them.
So, Jeff, this email about the small, medium, and large, is that why you're wanting to do this? Because
I think there's discrepancies within all of the rates.
so has everyone seen this?
Well,
John reviewed this work.
I sent it today. John doesn't even have the spreadsheets, I don't believe, Crystal gave out. What I would like is for Crystal, Matt, Brett to do these numbers so they're not Jeff's numbers.
We did look at this and John's seen all of this.
So
It's the exact same thing as.
So can we speak to that? Because that correlates to this talk where.
yeah, there seems to be high discrepancies within our rates with what they're paying.
So can we ask John about that while he's here? If he's seen it, I mean, can you speak to this?
So I can speak to some of it, not necessarily all of it. So the part I looked at was the assertion that some of the members weren't covering their purchase power costs. And I did not agree with that conclusion. I think it's incorrect because it looked to me, unless I'm misinterpreting it, which is certainly possible, that the wholesale, I don't know how you get the wholesale power cost. It looked like it was just an average dollar per kilowatt hour cost, which
It came off of our the document we were given last January the January 22 meeting where it gave us the average cost per kilowatt for wholesale for the year.
Okay, so that's what I thought it was. I wasn't sure if it came from Hoosier.
But it's the
CIA or
bill.
whatever else.
It would be your average of the 12 bills.
That's exactly the point. It's not the bill. Because,
And that's what I'm asking to see is the bills, so I can do the comparison.
okay, and that is the very guts of the problem. Because like we talked about, the Hoosier bill produces charges by substation under the standard wholesale tariff. And all of the members that take service under a particular substation, their usage is all mixed in to that particular bill. Which means that if you apply an average all-in rate cost, purchase power cost, then that's not going to be right.
So you're saying every commercial bill is based off of the substation that serves them?
No, what I mean to say is it is not possible to tell an individual retail member's portion of the wholesale bill because it's mixed in with all of the other retail members that take service under that substation.
Correct. Or the whole system.
Or the whole system.
But
Either way.
no one should be able to buy or have a power bill less than what our Hoosier power bill is.
That's not true.
I really struggle with that.
And let me explain why it is, because again, it comes back to the rate classes. So by design, you would have the rate classes, everyone in the rate class be similarly situated enough that when you create a rate for that class, it's based on averages for that particular class, the total dollars of purchase power cost for that class, small commercial, divided by the total billing units of that class, small commercial. Now, if those small commercial members, if there's 60 of them and their usage patterns differ enough that you don't have to necessarily put them in their own class, but they do differ. Well, some are going to pay more and some are going to pay less. As a class, I can tell you in the cost study, the class is covering its purchase power costs, all three of them, 2021.
Oh, definitely agree. And they're also all covering the 30% margin, and not all members are covering that.
That's correct. And that is true all the time, everywhere, because that's how rate classes work. Any individual, his farm might not be covering his fair share of the Hoosier cost for his farm, and mine might be covering more than my fair share. Well, I'm not a farmer, so I shouldn't put myself in that category. My house is not the same as Steve's house, and so I might be dragging on the system, and he could be paying for part of my bill. That's how it works. That's just how it works. Because of the averaging involved. Let me try it this way. Okay, let me try it this way. It's Matt's birthday, okay? So we're all gonna go out to eat for dinner tonight. Right? Happy birthday. 30 years old again. We're all gonna go out, and what is there, 10 of us? So we're gonna go to this restaurant and we order whatever you want. So I gotta order salad and a water because my pants don't fit so well with Christmas and all. So I'm gonna just get a salad and a water. And but it's his birthday, so he gets the appetizer, the steak, and the potato, and the cake. And then at the end, Brett pays the bill because he's the boss. So he pays the bill, and it's $30 a head for the whole bill. So then he paid the restaurant. That's Hoosier. So he paid the Hoosier bill, and then we got to pay him back. So I give him $10 because all I have is salad and water. I don't give him $30. And he says, "Whoa, that's not right. Everyone pays 30. Your cost is 30. No one should pay less than what we pay." And I said, "No, I didn't eat 10. I didn't eat 30. I ate 10. He should be paying more and I should be paying less." The rates work the exact same way because you average within the rate class. You take the total cost to that class that the study produces and the total usage that the class as a whole, on average, consumes. And you divide the two out to come up with a rate. So the rate making in a rate class is all based on averages. And unless the class only has one member, no one's going to really end up paying their quote fair share because of that averaging technique.
What your house,
That's what I
Clay, what your house causes me on the Hoosier bill It's different than what Carl says. They're different because your loads aren't the same.
But I don't put you on separate rate schedules.
Correct.
I lump you two together, average it out and charge you the same amount, the $30 dinner bill. Right? So you'd like to think that overall in real life, the usage at your house isn't that different from Carl's, just like his dinner isn't really that different than mine. We're all happy to chip in the $30. But in real life, that's not what happens. And you can't tell because the Hoosier bill is no different than his credit card bill where it just says the $300 or whatever it is. You don't get to see the individual contribution of every single premise to the Hoosier bill. You just get, all you get is the substation. That's the granularity. That's it.
It's somewhat similar to the whole, if you have a semi, an EV, and a minivan in the same fleet, right? I can take the miles per gallon for all three of those. I can average them, right? Say it's 19 miles a gallon. So could I come to you and say my EV is getting 19 miles a gallon?
I guess if that's the case, if you got a rate in there, you've got a meter reading off of that to know how much.
I don't have demand. I mean, for residential.
And Hoosier does not bill us by your meter. They bill us at a substation. That's why we do the rate, cost of service study.
That's kind of what I mean when I talk about those transformations from the power plants and transmission lines down to where we're billing customers. We transition. Hoosier takes by substation using their standard rate, and we transform that into our rate schedules. We use the cost of service study as a guide, but you can tell the revenues by every customer individually because we bill them. But in terms of the cost that Matt puts on the books every month,
I got 6 polls that come just to me.
I
There
can't
nobody
tell.
else.
I can't tell who's.
I don't get billed for those specific 6 polls.
That's why I wanted to, that key indicator page, that's why I want to get rid of that, because those numbers mean they're an average.
Dairy Farm at New Point gets hung, I have no polls. It should be cheaper than what it is.
So in the cost study, we take these big dollar amounts, all the money you spent on poles and all the money you spend on conduit and on employees, on A&G, on payroll tax, whatever. And we take that from the top down and spread it out to the various classes, residential, single phase, and the small commercial and the medium commercial and large commercial using these industry accepted practices. That's the only way you can do it. And so, and then when we get to the bottom and we have a total bucket of money that's associated with the cost of serving small commercial, I look at small commercial's usage and as a whole class, and divide it out to come up with an average per unit cost for the class. For energy, I do the same thing for demand. I do the same thing for customer. And in reality, no one person is exactly average, but it should be close. And that's the way we design it.
So Steve, do we need a motion tonight to give him a direction to go in the next month, or Jason?
You mean that in regards to the LCP?
Yes.
Probably because the clock's ticking. We got to have something in place by April 1st.
And that's what we talked about, was focusing on them so we could go forward and then we can look at the rest later.
Personally, I'd like to see the option of the phase in, although I'm not saying that I'm in favor of that because some other member is going to end up eating that. But I understand the situation and the increase. But I'd like to see the option of what the phase in looks like.
So make that motion so we can go on tonight with this topic and at least have action going forward.
That's the motion.
Are you including that?
It may not be stated as eloquently as.
How long do you?
What's that period of time?
No more than 3 years.
But this is strictly as an option. You
Yeah,
want action?
I'm not advocating for anything, but I would like to see the information
So within 3 years,
That's your motion.
within the 3-year time frame. Because the cost of service study is really only supposed to last 3 to 4 years. I don't see any need to string it out any farther than that. Over a 3-year period, let's say, no more than 3 years.
Get Crystal over that.
I should have, start stretching it out.
Now, I'm not, don't interpret that as I'm on board with it, but
So it's an option and that's your motion.
that's my motion.
So I will second that motion.
So
so we can proceed.
All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say. All right. That sounds just.
Hang on, right.
So you guys have a problem doing that? That's what I would suggest. No, I'd go and get it done. The one, yeah. Or there's two interruptibles. Rates. One has someone on it, the other one does not have anyone on it.
Oh, okay. So that first item that,
3A.
John alluded to, yeah, 3A. So there's currently two interruptible rates. One has no one on it. One of them has nothing, no one on them. And the other one does. So I think we can go ahead.
And this one, there had been conversations on, correct?
That is correct.
So can, go ahead and finish what you're doing.
Well, I'm just saying I would consider a motion for rescinding the interruptible rate. What's your question, Jeff?
I was just gonna, I agree with Dale. Someone needs to be talking to these members pronto.
This one's on the
No, I'm talking the other four is what I was going back to, Dale. Yes. This one has been.
Are you guys good with, we didn't want to have conversations with them unless we knew what direction we're going. Is everyone, I don't know what to tell them their impact's gonna be because I don't know what you want to do.
Which one? Are we on the interrupter or the LC?
Yeah, we're talking, I think we're back to the,
For the interruptible first.
let's see, but we need to wait for Clay to get in here. We're talking about, making a motion to rescind the interruptible.
But they know it's coming,
They
correct?
do.
Yes,
Yes, so I'll make the motion.
they're gonna pick up the other one.
We have a first.
Oh, I'll second it, yeah, but I wanted to ask that question about the LMR. Did they already agree to the LMR, you said?
They haven't signed the paperwork and they're not real sure what level.
Hey Brett,
Yeah.
they have their paperwork as of today, so they are signing.
So is that the 2 hour or 4 hour?
They go for
They are going to,
2 hour.
yes.
Yep, that's the alarm program.
So meaning they get a 2-hour
They're gonna get a 2-hour notice before they gotta go down to whatever level they sign up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we have a first and a second. Do we have any additional questions, discussion? All those in favor of rescinding the interruptible rate?
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Okay, that's it. What say you, Brian Schuyler?
Aye.
Okay.
I approve.
Yeah, you got
I know there's a delay, so that's why if I don't vote, just assume that I vote for it.
Okay,
3A.
Did everyone agree?
yes, it was unanimous. Okay, so we had, yeah, did you get your?
Yeah, that John is going to propose a redesign to smooth the transition for LC
Okay.
members to LC. That's an option. Only a
So John, you got down what you need to be doing for us for the,
Back to the conversations on the LCP. The first question they're gonna ask me when I tell them is, okay, what's the impact? So I don't know what to tell them.
I think you just need to let them know some changes coming.
well, like you said, they're gonna want to know kind of what it is.
Well, maybe I just tell them that the load, why, and and we'll let you know more detail. The load control is going away.
I wouldn't be up to X.
I don't know if, do you?
Jeff,
Said it tonight on the video,
Yeah, go ahead.
wouldn't you?
I think that it's a very good idea to approach those members until we have a plan. They're already not going to be happy with anything that we do. So I think that we need to wait until we need a decision in January, and then we need to have that conversation as soon as we know what we're doing in January.
Is January going to be okay? The end of January? Because that's when the meeting's scheduled. Or
Yeah,
do we
that's
need
fine.
to stop?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have to give them a 30-day notice of a rate.
Okay.
So if we know what we're doing at the end of January, we can have that conversation literally the next week.
Thanks, Crystal. I keep forgetting you're on.
Yeah, just yell at me. I'm listening.
Okay. Your name's right in front of me, but I just keep.
All right, so I think we have a plan for that. I want to go back to the emails. Look through the day in 11:19. We got the questions answered. Are we satisfied with John?
No, I think he needs to look at it just to see how big the disparity is, but that's for another day. That's why I was hoping we could make the motion and move on.
He needs to look at, you're talking the commercial.
All of it across. We're focusing right now, so we'll have something for next month. But after next month, I think we need to look at all of it. Yeah, that's what I thought.
What do you want?
That's option 3.
He agreed, he was going out for some figures that Jeff was on and agreed upon that, so.
Like, what is it? Do you know?
Well, I can attempt to prepare a written response to the questions. You did ask for that.
That's fine.
That's different than a rate design initiative.
And we can talk about that more in January.
I think that makes a lot of sense. By that, I mean to not talk about it right now.
Right. Yeah, no,
Then I agree, because it's big. Yeah. And your motion, I think, makes sense too, because it's a clock ticking on these guys, right?
So John, you have what you need from us from that perspective?
I do.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for John before he wants to show you back to the south? Anything else for John?
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Yes. Glad to be here right back at you all. Hopefully this bad weather coming our way won't be as bad as they say.
It'll be rain.
I think you're
I
right.
think they'll overstay.
I gotta get cold.
It's gonna be cold and rainy.
They overstay.
We always have in Decatur County
It's
Christmas.
like the hype, right? There's no question about that.
Never know. All right, so we got the next item, 60-minute moment.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, here we go. So for cool moments, at our IEC annual meeting, so there's 5 Youth Power and Hope Awards that are given throughout the state of Indiana. Through all the 38 co-ops, there's 5 of them. And we ended up having 3 of the 5 actually win here locally. So I thought that was really cool. There's the 3 young individuals that were awarded that. We're getting ready to do a press release to talk about all 3 of them, but thought that was kind of cool. Some of the other co-ops were saying, man, you guys are some talent. Second thing is I just wanted to congratulate, thought it was cool. Crystal also received an award that exact same night for what they call the LEAD program. So essentially what the LEAD program is it's designed to give the graduates of Relight, which is another leadership program, an opportunity to further grow and develop their leadership skills. Crystal was, and IEC wanted to make sure I put in here that participants that are able to participate and lead are hand selected. So this isn't something that Brett can just say, hey, I'd like Crystal to go to this lead program, which is again, an advanced leadership class. She was hand selected by a group of folks at IEC that decided for Crystal to go. So Crystal was awarded that at the same meeting, and want to congratulate her. And that is not an easy thing to do. So anyways, that's.
Congratulations.
Nicely
Crystal.
done. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Safety moment, coming, well, we're not gonna get ice, hopefully. I'm not plastic for that. But we have participated on a phone call, EMA phone call every day. Brad Spear heads that up along with all the other folks from town. So one thing that we always tell is just, hey, make sure if you see lines laying on the ground that first responders aren't touching those, because we've had instances in the past where they're removed from the road. Heavy ice can take things down. So again, we're just reminding everybody that if you see a down power line, just like our guys, don't assume that's dead. Ice actually and snow actually can be an insulator. And so that wire can be live and not faulted and could be carrying 7,200 volts. So that's something that could result in death, right? So just want to remind everybody from a safety moment, we're coming across some rough weather and just want to make sure if you see down power lines again, but not touch those, report those.
All right, thanks, Brad. For the board, for your information, does anybody have any questions?
Page 11 of the check register. The power systems engineering, this is design stuff.
Yeah.
This is
Consultant, the engineering consultant. So it's probably, some of it's gonna be the white ribbons you see around poles. They're going out and looking at things. So,
See, assist Chris or
yeah, they assist Chris.
That's who we contracted with to do our in budget 23 plan project design that we said we wanted to get out and our actual 2022.
Is this a monthly or year?
I don't know exactly how that, I don't think
They
it's
bill us
monthly.
every month something.
Yeah.
But
Dollar amount that's in the registers, not a quarterly bill, that's a bill.
It changes depending on what.
some months it's higher, some months it's lower.
It's
Does
in
their
there.
bill contain what project they're on?
Yeah.
So could you put that in the narrative and that would answer a lot of questions.
For every single bill, I mean, those make up the top.
I would say with the money we're spending on them, yes, I'd like to know where it's going. Please.
That is in our financials too. Sections out in. We can hit it up when we get there. The overall numbers.
I think I want agreement from the board that it was. We can do it with the
Which would be easiest, Matt? Would it be easier just to put the invoice numbers in there and then just scan the invoices for us to reference? So we're not referencing every nickel and dime, but the larger amounts? Would that be easier?
Let me pull
I mean, if that's something easier to reference.
up the check, because I mean, they break out their invoices.
I mean, when you read one of our other contractors, you know exactly where the money's going.
This is in budget though.
It's all within the budget, but it's just what project is this money being spent on?
there's. I guess, are you asking for every invoice? You want us to scan you every invoice? Is that?
If they want to reference the line, I mean, I didn't know if it just put as instead of consulting services, put the invoice number and then scan the invoices for us to review if there's a question on a larger number.
Well, those invoices appear on the left, but you're.
The invoice numbers are?
Yeah, the invoice numbers is there on the far left.
But it doesn't tell you what project it's.
I get that, but
Just scanning the invoices and comparing them, if you have a question on them, wouldn't that save everybody a step?
Except the person scanning all the invoices.
I mean, how long does, I mean, that's just how my office does it when there's questions on
Well, how many invoices are you getting in a month?
over here.
It's this month.
10,000, 1,000?
No, there's,
I'm not asking for every invoice. I'm just asking for PSC.
less than 20,
there's probably 15 this month.
less than 20.
But my guess is each invoice has different projects on them. I don't know.
The engineer breaks down where we can do which job, which work order. You know, I mean, sometimes he'll split one of these 5 different ways. So
I don't know that we're gonna be able to get you that.
I mean, we could scan every invoice to you, but I don't know if it's gonna answer the question you're looking for, is my only concern. I mean, is there like a threshold, like a dollar amount, any of them that are over X you'd like to see, or is it just everything in
I
general?
just think we spend a lot of money with them, and I'd like to know where it's going.
It's going through construction.
It lists the project that it's going to.
Okay,
And if it goes to 5 projects, list 5 projects.
For that invoice.
so you would like us to change our, how we're doing our.
No, I'm not, I don't want you to have to change anything. I
No,
just
no,
like
what
a
I'm
little
saying
more
is-
information.
When we put consulting services in, we could probably go in there and put a work order next to that.
But a work order's not gonna tell us anything without knowing what the work orders are, right?
It will, yeah, they'll all go back to your work plan. It comes back to work plan numbers. Or it could be,
I mean, it could also be,
Pole replacement, could be.
I mean, probably a lot of these are pole replacements is probably what a lot of them are. Just by looking at I can pull up.
I've got in all the invoices.
All the invoices are gonna have on them, it's probably.
Well, I know, but that's what's available.
Trying to think of, I mean, I get what you're asking, but I am,
and again, you get back with us next month on what the solution would be.
So are we talking about a certain group of vendors?
You're referring to PSC, right?
One vendor?
Well, we got the PSC, we've got, I mean, I look at even like United Utility, all we get is a specialty equipment for X amount of dollars. You know, what
those are almost always the specialty equipment's transformers. We got in a bunch of transformers this month, so, and if you look at the plant that I list out what transformers we got.
And this is all goes up through our budget, so you can get on our budget and see where we're.
some of this goes for pole replacement. I looked at, added up the dollar amount, just pole replacements. Are these part of the active poles, are these improvement poles, or these?
I don't know which one you're talking about. Invoice you're talking about.
Are you talking about the invoices on page 10? Is that what you're?
Well, there's page 10. One later, page 21. Because those don't have anything to do with the meter pole project. So
Page 20. It's D&T. All of our contractors costs roll up through our budget and our financials that we're gonna go.
I was gonna say it didn't roll up to our budget because we're $500,000 over on regular poll that we didn't approve.
But it all rolls up to our financials every month. All these numbers in the check registers roll up to what you guys approve as far as financials every month. I don't know what you want.
Contractor pole replacements. I'm pretty certain those are our red tag poles. I'd have to look at each individual invoice, but looking at the dollar amounts, I believe that that's what those are.
If we can handle a few of these via email. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of board time on these, so I think, because maybe we'd all like to know.
We could get the information put right on the check register. It's taken care of.
But if you have a question, email it out, handle it ahead of time,
Yeah,
maybe,
like, what's this?
Just
in an effort to.
Okay, what else do we have from, for your information?
Special equipment, Clay is transforming. Sure. The US special equipment's transforming.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, guys?
Thank you.
Move on?
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna go to the approval of the previous meeting minutes. We still have October's to do. We did not read that task last month, November, so we're gonna do them separate. I think you all saw the response back from Brian Garrison regarding, I think, Carl, you brought to our attention that you were wanting some additional information included. And I think that was the only thing that was holding us up. And we saw his response, correct?
So the meeting minutes were not confidential, correct? Because the board did not vote for them to be confidential. The special meeting minutes.
I didn't interpret it that way.
That's how I interpreted it. That the board chooses what's confidential. The board.
You did say in the email that everything was, who cares at this point?
Exactly, because it's public information. But
Well, so the question is, we've got these minutes to approve. Are we going to go with what we have here, or does something need to be added? I followed up with you guys' direction. I contacted Brian Garrison.
Well, I'm good with it as long as it don't come back and bite me in the ass. Because we can jumped on whoever was supposed to give out this information when it wasn't really confidential. So,
Are you making a motion?
yeah, I'll make a motion.
To approve October's meeting minutes.
I'll second the motion.
We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. All right, October meeting minutes are approved. Let's go to November. Everybody had a chance to look at them? Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second to approve the November meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. November meeting minutes are approved. CEO update.
All right, so mainly last month was really spent on the budget. We also did have the IEC annual meeting and a few other meetings that I listed. I'm not going to go through. Going to go through some of the strategic project updates. The list is, we're getting towards the end of the year, so the list ought to be getting small. So I thought I'd give an update on a few things. I don't know why that. All right, so first thing is the safety improvement plan. So this was the plan that we sign up for every year on what are we doing with safety. One of the major things was crew audits. We agreed to doing 12 crew audits. The goal was 12 crew audits. We are at 11. Pat believes he's going to get that next one done next week. So that'll hit our goal of the 12 audits to be done. Meter pole replacements. So I'm going to go through kind of the updates. And so these are kind of how, so we have a spreadsheet that basically lists all the meter poles and all the tree refusals. So this is going to be, I'm going to sort of report out the same way every month. So as far as meter poles, we have 40 in process in the staking department with an average open day of 103 days. We're waiting on the member on 31 of those with an average open day of 138. Our contractor has 24 to go, which again, we put money in the budget for 2023. He stopped working on those until budget for 2023 because we've already got a backlog of them. And then pending a CO or a service order, there's 26. So point is progress is being made. We are going to follow up. Our new staking engineer is going to, on beginning of the year, is going to start making phone calls back around to those folks that we're waiting on. Again, there's quite a few of these that the member has agreed to kind of a plan going forward with our contractor. But they haven't, we're waiting on them. They've got to do their construction and get their green tags before we can do anything. Pole replacement program. So we roughly have just less than 30 poles to go. Depending on how the storm outlays will depend on if we get all those done or not. Next is our construction work plan. At this point, the circuit that's on here that end of the building, they have that, all the conduits in, they pulled the first run through today. As you guys heard last month, we're not going to actually be able to switch over to that new circuit until the weather. We can't at this point because we're at max load on that. We're gonna have to take an outage on it, switch that load, and we don't want to do that with the cold weather they're predicting and create an issue. So again, everything will be ready to go. All we got to do is we'll have to have a planned outage, switch that over to a different bay, and then switch it back. Everything else, I think you guys have an update on as far as where we're at on that. Tree trimming refusals, we have 5 that are kind of in me and Pat's hands with an average open day of 73 days. The meter department has 29 of them, average open day of 63 days. Staking department has 10 in process with an average open day of 95 days. The tree contractor has 5 in process with an average open day of 73 days. And we're waiting on one that's waiting on the member, and it's been open for 175. And making progress on tree refusals. Broadband, not a huge update there. We are still working with IEC, and they have a contracting group that is reviewing and looking at all the proposals as far as all the BEAD stuff. I think Sam's been participating in phone calls on that just to keep our hands around kind of what grants are out there. And kind of where we're at on that. And that is it for projects. Any questions on as far as projects?
Yeah, okay. Yes, I would like to have, is the project that's going on out here, is that the G2 and G3, or is it G2 and G3 separate projects?
That's the G2 and the G3.
So I'd like to have the quotes for the G2, G3 projects, and then I'd like to also have the quotes for the current project that's on the east end of town on 46. If you could.
These are all construction bids. I'll have to give you guys
The last one shouldn't be a construction bid.
it is, it came from a pole replacement.
I'd like to have a copy of the quotes then. And then if I could also, I would like to know what the REMC cost was to finish the AMP project out on Vandalia Road. My understanding, we had to go back and make repairs, and that was pretty significant. So if you could provide us what the cost of those repairs were.
What repairs?
I believe there was a line not buried deep enough, and we had to dig it back up and replace it.
We did.
If you could, and if we didn't have any cost, that's fine.
I need more details on that because you got more information than I got.
Yeah. I'll get with you on that.
Just need to know who and what and all that information.
Okay, I'll get with you.
And then on the construction, I was going to ask you guys how you want that. It's this thick. So the way that we did this bid was by construction units, which is the best way of doing it when it comes to a utility. And so what we did is we sent it out to, I think there's 10 different companies. We ended up getting 3 or 4 bids back by construction unit. So I got a high level kind of like, here's what their construction unit cost came in for specific jobs. That's kind of what I was planning on because we got an action item. So that's what I was planning on giving you. I don't know what else you need for that.
That'd be a great start.
Okay. And then I'll need more information from the board on the Vandalia. Because I apparently don't know what you know. You ready for company metrics? Any other questions? And then that job over at, you're talking about the code violation from the poll that was rejected. I can say it's over by Levinstein's.
Yeah, I didn't know if I could say the member's name or not.
That's not the member. That has nothing to do with that member. It's just the location that it's there.
Correct.
So what questions are there around?
I'd like to know what the quote was for that job.
It was done by bid. It was done by construction units.
So I'd like to have that, please.
Was there a conversation with one of our vendors?
No,
There wasn't? Today, there wasn't a conversation with any of our vendors?
did I have a vendor call me? Yes, I did.
Was there a conversation today?
Yes,
What conversation was that?
I will gladly talk to you outside this meeting.
I'd like to have that conversation. Because I think the board needs to know what that conversation was.
I think so too.
Was it,
There's definitely some,
Pardon?
was it unsolicited?
Completely unsolicited.
Have you had previous conversations with them
In the past, yes.
recently?
No.
How recent?
What difference is it?
was there any agreements that that contractor should have?
I'm just asking what different he's.
I'm just asking,
Was there any conversations that that vendor should have all of our business?
no, I don't believe that at all. I just believe I want to make sure we're bidding our jobs.
We do it by construction unit.
Just let me see what the construction unit bid is then, please.
Just want to make sure, because I don't know if there was any from a vendor standpoint. We ready?
I talk to vendors all the time, the asphalt.
I'm just wanting to make sure that the board knows what commitments you're making for.
I made no commitment. I'm just asking a question.
So I'm gonna ask the question, because just for my information. Because I'm tired of talking in riddles. So you want the bids because they asked?
No. I just want to know. I want to know how we can give this job to a company and they could sub it out. I drove by and seen a company doing it. I'm pretty sure we gave this job to D&T because they're doing our pole replacement, correct?
Exactly, and we don't have at the point in time when we made the decision to go with D&T, our underground contractor stack of work to do is this big, and our crews were this,
All I asked for the quotes.
but that's not where this came from.
Some was initiated.
Yes, it was an issue.
Is it, are we doing competitive quotes?
We are doing competitive quotes on an assembly unit basis. Again, I said that 100.
Then please provide that for me.
What does it have to do with the conversation today with the vendor? Anything?
That's what.
No, I just want to make sure that we're doing competitive bids.
Don't we have to since we're borrowing RUS money?
Yes, you have to get at least.
I mean, we've been over this.
If you don't do that, you can't.
You don't get the money.
Yeah. You have to. All right, so I'm gonna go through the metrics. November, we were about 43 degrees with a 5-year average of 41. Purchased energy was way down, actually. You can see the 5-year average is right here. That's where we were at for November. That's purchase energy from Hoosier. And then our demand was almost flat, down shy of the 5-year average. We lost a little bit of ground again this month. So we were prior month, we were 3.13, less than budget. We grew to 3.62. You can see the biggest one here, though we lost some ground on a couple different places this last month. It's our tracker. So this is Hoosier's tracker is in blue. And you can see with the way our tracker smooths out, we are catching up to where Hoosier's is at. This is definitely going to be an issue at the beginning of the year, kind of like what we've been talking about as far as that. Daily Sadie, it's been pretty quiet. Yeah, it's been really quiet, so I'm not gonna say any more to it. So now I'll pass it over to Matt for financials. Ready?
All right. In general, the balance sheet, there's very little change. If you looked at the key lines in your report, there's really no categories that stick out. I mean, outside of nothing was over the 5% and 250,000. In general, our utility plant went up 276,000, and that's pretty much really the only thing of substance. Most accounts really didn't even, there were several accounts that didn't change. So any questions on the balance sheet? We have our statement of operations. For the month, we have our actuals improved, our budgeted margin was $693 and we came in at 79,000. So we caught back up some. Year to date, our revenues are low and our power is high, which that's the power tracker catching back up part of that. Controllable expenses are over, and that's solely due to the maintenance department with the right-of-way timing and contract labor from outages. And then everything else is pretty much, they are what they are. So we're under by about $130,000 year to date. And that's where the income statement is. Any questions on that? Cash flows, cash relatively even for the month, down 83,000. Year to date, 515, really nothing of, no major activity really in November. Here we have you can go ahead and go past this. This is just here's the distribution work plan. In general, we're over budget for the year. Reflected still in this is the 1,000 MCM wire that we've discussed many times. I do believe as of this week, we have several co-ops that are interested in purchasing all the excess. So I don't know how quickly, if that'll come off in December or if they will get it in January. So that will.
Do you have an estimated amount on that excess? The amount?
Probably about 300 if it's all 300 grand, if we get rid of all the reels that we're looking at. There was 6 co-ops that were ready to come pick it up the next day,
Sounds great.
maybe.
Call them tomorrow morning. I'm just side note.
Because it's not.
You think it'd be above 300,000?
It's gonna be a shy above 300. Depends on what you use for the feet per reel.
Well, that's true.
We get you an exact time or an exact one when we,
I think will we be losing money or getting the equal value?
we're not, I'm not gonna get rid of it for any less than what we paid for.
Okay, so it'll either be equal value or higher than what's part of
In
it.
fact, most of them are, all of them, we've required 2 things. Number one, I'm not gonna get rid of it for what we paid for it. And number 2, they're gonna come pick it up. So I know we'll probably have 3 sold by maybe possibly next, depends on this weather,
Christmas Eve,
possibly.
Might be 3 tomorrow.
Merry Christmas.
This whole, the sale, that's gonna affect the budget.
Possibly, yeah, the cash flow.
Yeah.
Just cash flow.
It'll affect the plant here and it'll also affect,
That's why we're doing it.
So can we remove it from the plant before year end?
it's gonna be sold before year end.
Right, well, once it's sold immediately, could we get that updated?
That's why I haven't put it
We're
in.
so close to the month and.
I know, that's,
You're not gonna get it out of,
that's the thing is I think some of it, yes, it's gonna happen this year, but you're gonna run into cutoff issues of it's gonna be,
You have tomorrow and 3 days next week.
I know. So I'm pretty certain it's gonna happen, but until it's picked up, well, you know how it is it's gotta be moved.
Oh, yeah, it's gotta be off premises and granted.
Okay.
As long as it's paid for by the, and then the books by the end of the year, whenever they pick it up.
They're probably not gonna pay for it.
Yeah, I doubt they're gonna give you a check and leave it on your premises, would be my
Yeah.
guess for that kind of money.
I would imagine we won't get paid for it next week, though. That's the thing. It's gonna hit first part of next year, yeah.
none of this is signed yet. I mean, none of this is by any means.
I'm just trying to look at the numbers reflecting the numbers on.
Well, I mean,
And there's still risk that something will come up next year. We'll have to
I get that.
try to find something.
But for the numbers we got now.
I mean, from a budget standpoint, it's gonna move from plant to inventory effectively. I mean, it's still gonna be, it's not gonna be in the distribution plant, but it'll move to inventory instead of here. So it's
So on the balance sheet.
It's gonna be on the balance.
300,000 will come out of the 2021 distribution work plan project.
Yes.
Thank you.
And depending on the exact number of feet, and the exact, yeah.
It depends on how many we rip. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
and some of them are dependent on the cancellation of where they made with the vendor. So in other words, if another co-op needs it, they need it closer than the 27, 20, or no, it's 72 months now. Lead time for that stuff. They got to make sure that they can get that order canceled with the vendor before they buy it. Does that make sense?
But there is interest.
Correct. Oh, there's a ton of interest.
Right, let's move on. Let's talk about.
We started a conversation boardroom last week. That last week? Yeah.
What?
I would like to. I'd like to have an executive session, not tonight, another time, get together to finish conversation. I think we can get a lot accomplished there, and I've got questions I need answered.
Well, we can get some of those answered maybe now. That's the time.
I believe there's several financial questions as a board we need to talk about and get answers to. But I don't think tonight's the place.
Regarding the budget, you mean, Jeff?
Yes.
A lot of it stayed confidential, so that was kind of a question in my mind too, what we can discuss and not discuss. But we were heading in the right direction when we had our small meeting. We were all kind of not on the same page, but in the same book or in the same section of the library. So I feel like that conversation was a positive one. But with it being marked confidential, I don't know exactly what we're allowed to come out and say directly or indirectly without.
Clay, and you and I have talked about this outside of this room. We really need Matt there. The board's not going to be able to answer your questions.
Okay.
I mean, there's no reason to have an executive session because we don't have the answers you're looking for.
We can invite whoever we
Absolutely.
want to.
I'm just saying, don't exclude everyone because,
No, I think we need to get together.
but why don't we just do it now? What do we need to wait?
I would rather have a meeting where we can focus on that topic and not hurry through it because it's going to get late. So I mean, if you want to go ahead and start the process to approve the budget, I will be a no because I think we need to have these discussions.
Concerning what specifically?
Multiple topics.
Like,
We were talking about tree trimming, pole replacement.
The right of way, some of the extra vehicles, just general term, just some things I think that.
We can answer those now.
Well, again, we would like to have a separate meeting. I would like to.
Listen, I know we talked about it. I would, if I get everybody's agreement, I can have a comfortable conversation and.
yeah, let's have it now. Let's
do it.
I don't want this,
Well,
why we're waiting.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and have it now. You want Matt and Brett both in here then?
I don't want Brett in here.
I think.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's have an executive session with the directors. So we can have our discussion. No, not tonight, at another day.
No, we'll go ahead and do it.
No, I'm still not going to vote to approve the budget, Steve.
I think that's taking the wrong approach. If you hear some, if we get questions answered.
Okay, there's
Get her done.
$1 million mistakes in the budget.
I disagree with that.
You're allowed to. So anyhow, that's where I'm at. I
Agree with that?
disagree with
I'd like to have a
that.
conversation about that right now.
Okay. We know you're projecting $800,000 loss. Is that confidential?
No, none of this is, I don't think.
All marked confidential.
It is, and that's why I struggle.
I don't think anybody wants you to hand that book over to.
Well, then,
Stamp confidential, that's the part that I'm getting at.
Turn off the thing then. Come on, let's just talk about it. Turn off the recording.
1 minute,
Hey, we're going to go ahead and go into.
That's why I say turn off the thing.
can we start the executive session with just the 8 directors?
I'm
I would think so.
not against that. I
Take a
guess.
list for Matt.
Hey, Crystal,
Ryan wants to stay on.
Yeah,
can you jump off? But I might need you for budget questions. So can you jump off and then I'll call you back?
yep. Just text me when you need me to come back on.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Somebody hit record off. or
Okay.
pause.
And I need a. Okay. We're back into open session. I need a motion to support those items that we're going to approve.
We'll make that motion. It's the 2 items, correct?
Yeah.
The pole replacement or hiring the 2 apprentices and reducing the
No,
right of way.
it was the right of way at 1.15.
Correct.
Second.
So we have a first. 20 seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same. All right. We're good with that then.
Ryan, did you vote yes?
He said aye.
Oh.
He said aye.
All right.
If didn't say no.
I'm gonna leave him out.
All right, we have the survey results for broadband. I hope has everybody looked
Had
at
them for
it?
2 weeks, right? So
I wasn't planning on going through it because you guys can read it.
I just wanted to make a comment for any of those, for those of you that did not hear the when we had the town hall, thank you. The town hall meeting, I highly recommend it. Okay,
With the letters that we're receiving from certain members, are we as directors allowed to talk to those members? I don't plan on making any commitments to them.
no, I'm sorry. What letters are you?
None of those three, I believe, are all from one district. And I don't know that for fact, but I'm assuming they're in one area.
Oh, okay. You're talking the emails.
Yes. Are we allowed to reach out to them as individuals and talk to them and get their input? Or do we?
Yeah.
Because I think there's some things I could share with them that.
Okay.
So are these, I'm aware of one, are there been other emails?
Yeah, there's been three.
We are recording. We had one from an attendee of the town hall, female. We had one from a proprietor in Millhausen.
Prior to?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant.
And then the first one came through was a member that said they would be able to attend.
Yeah, I thought you meant we had three since the.
Oh, okay.
Since the town hall.
Yeah, and then the third one was also from Millhausen.
Yeah, which was really
That was the first.
all right, let's go to the next item, policy bylaw reviews and before that we can, there's some changes, minimal changes, I would suggest. I am a little confused on the second one, the working capital. You have redlined December 27th. You want to, maybe that's not really an issue, but I was just.
I think what it is the last time it was reviewed was I must have accidentally removed it and then put it back in
Okay.
there. So it's showing up that it was in there. I'm assuming if you go back and
Look at the current policy.
it's going to say that it was reviewed in December 27, 2021.
On policy 4 the first one. Is that what you were saying? You mistakenly redlined the top line, had to add it back in?
The December 21st?
No, whereas on the policy 4-13.
Yep, on there.
Okay, over the top, you got everything crossed out. You got Decatur County Rural Electric membership, and then underneath it, you got the same thing crossed out.
Yeah.
So
Is there something different that I didn't see?
we're trying to get it's a good question. We're trying to get all these on the same format.
Okay.
So our normal format is it's actually up in the header.
Okay.
Set at the top. So what we did is we removed it from the top and put it in the header. So it shows up in the.
Are these all, things that I'm looking at?
They're generated from policy tech. So whenever I make any change, if I make something by mistake or whatever, it's going to generate a red line from it.
Okay.
And some of this, quite honestly, is me learning the system. If there's ever a question, just go back into your so for 413, you could actually go into the dashboard, go back to the 413 actually as it's approved today in your guys' iPad.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see what the differences are. I'm hoping that gets a little better as I get better at the system too.
Okay.
There's nothing material in any of these.
We
No, it
do them
doesn't
all
look-
at once.
Yeah, we can do them all one time.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
First and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same. All right, we're good. Affiliated organizations. Jason, do you have anything?
We did have a short board meeting the other day. We've got like a board kind of, what call that, some kind of treat or whatever, but we did have a short board meeting. There were two things I wanted to point out. Hoosier's credit rating was again A+ from S&P. That's important because if we go to a BBB, our interest rates way up. So that's important that they continue to do that. And like with all this, these unscheduled capital credit retirements, and have to be really careful to get approval for all that and make sure that we're maintaining all of our financial metrics. But so far, so good. And then on the second page of that report, there's an interesting read there from NERC and then MISO's expectations for the winter as far as a severely cold weather event. So anyway, I talked to Brett about that earlier in the week, and so far MISO hasn't issued any kind of max load warnings or anything for this system. So we have enough resources to meet our needs. So we're good.
We hope so.
Yeah, we hope so. Anything
As of now.
as of right now, there's enough capacity. Always good for Christmas. Always be failures,
We actually told Sam that, MISO may call them and need him to turn his lights off.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Is he in Elmore?
No.
Nothing from an IEC perspective as far as a board meeting, but I will start out on the next item, Director Training Conference. The IEC annual meeting did occur on the 5th and 6th. I have a couple things written down. I know Jason attended and Ryan was there. I was only there for one day. The first day, the 5th, was really what I thought was a pretty good meeting. We talked about a couple of topics. One of them was it's not boring, it's economics, and the guy did a great job for econ. His recommendation was the population needs to explode so we don't go into a recession. But he said it in a slightly different manner. You had to be there to really understand what he was saying. Challenges facing the grid was another topic. It was a MISO product manager that gave that presentation. Making an impact in the boardroom, Brian Singletary did that. Always be prepared as a director. And then the last one was more of a community. It's understanding overdoses, talking about fentanyl and how it impacted. There was, I can't remember the man's name, but he had lost his son and kind of told the story. And it was a good first day anyway. Anything else happened the second day?
Not really noteworthy. I would say the biggest takeaway or the best discussion was The Economist. And his take on recession and the probabilities of that and going to happen. So he does think that's going to happen, but he does think it will be short-lived. So.
Anybody else? Brian, any comments?
No, I don't really have anything to add.
Okay. Think we're good. Anybody have anything else before we adjourn?
10 minutes.
All right, take a motion to
A motion to adjourn.
adjourn. We have a first and a second. We're adjourned. We're gonna go into executive session. Brian, you're gonna stay on.
I'm gonna make it as quick as possible.